What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Time for another album review. I know I said not to get used to this when I did the Arctic Thunder review a couple of weeks ago, but another album's coming out that I wanted to talk about that I'm not going to be talking about on the podcast. And the album is the new record from thrash metal legends Testament. It is called Brotherhood of the Snake. Now, I really don't have much to say before we go into the review, like I did on when I talked about Arctic Thunder, because here there isn't much backstory to really talk about. I don't have to preface this with anything. But I mean, Brotherhood of the Snake, this album leaked, so I'm going to have a bit of a chat about it now before it comes out in a couple of days, just so I can get my thoughts out there, and hopefully loads of people will see this and I can make a decent bit of ad revenue on the basis that I did something very naughty with a torrent. God, I made that sound like a sex offence. So what I'm going to do, similar sort of format, I'm going to go track by track on the album, then I'm going to tell you about the sort of overall positives and negatives of the album, and give it my score, and how, so that you can gauge whether or not you want to get hold of this album. So the album kicks off with the title track, which I'm sure you've all heard by now, Brotherhood of the Snake, and this song starts off with a brilliantly groovy verse and works its way into a very thrashy chorus. It's definitely a great way to start the album off. The lyrical content on the song is actually really good. It's about the kind of secrecy and political agenda of the Catholic Church and the Vatican. It's definitely the best lyrical content on the album, and I think it's a subject that more bands should really be writing about, because it's definitely a rich vein for kind of criticising an institution, if you will. There's a lot of kind of melodic interludes in the song that keep everything ticking over perfectly. This is definitely my favourite song on the album. The Pale King similarly has great melodies and heaviness about it. It keeps the groove really ticking over for what is ultimately quite an enjoyable song. I've got to say though, overall it does feel like there's a little something missing from the song, and I've no idea what, but every time I listen to it I know that there's something that, if just that tiny little something was to come into the song, this would be my favourite on the album, but it's just not there. I don't know what it is that I want to be added to the song, but sorry. The third song, Stronghold, is a pretty straight up thrash song. It's pretty back to basics, old school punky thrash metal. I really don't have any particular problems with the song, but it is a little bit generic and on the fillery side. I've got to say the soloing throughout it is great. I mean, there's one solo that's got this kind of almost Arabic world music feel, and I really enjoy that. I love when solos are kind of influenced by world music. Seven Seals is a slightly more down-tempo number, but it certainly has a great crescendo towards the chorus, and the chorus cuts through with a great melody that really gives the whole thing a sense of purpose. Unfortunately, the song does meander a little bit here and there. There's plenty of sections put in to keep the diversity up, but none of them really pop and grab you the way that they would have to. It's an okay song, not great, but like I say, there are problems with it. The fifth track, Born in a Rut, starts with an unnecessary intro, but once it gets down to it, it's actually a pretty cool song. The lyrics, from what I can tell, concern a abused child growing into a bad adult, and that is a fairly hackneyed lyrical content, but Testament execute it okay. The chorus is really good with great sing-along potential. I just get the sense that this is going to be one that the Testament fans love the chorus of. And has got great sing-along potential live with lots of fist pumping and stuff. Centuries of Suffering is another very immediate thrash song. It's the shortest song on the album and it's quite basic in structure. It doesn't really have that many distinguishing features that set it apart from the rest, but it is a fairly good song in its own right. I've got to at this point say that this is one of Gene Hoglan's best performances on the album. I mean, we all know the guy's a great drummer, but his double bass patterns here are just immense. Next up is Neptune's Spear, which has a really great sense of variety, like a lot of the songs on this album, but there really isn't anything that makes it pop. It just doesn't really have a sense of immediacy about it. All the sections are fine, but they come together a little bit awkwardly and don't really deliver as a sort of overall piece of music. Blackjack has some incredibly stupid lyrics about Las Vegas and the city of sin and gambling. Actually, musically, it's a pretty sweet song. The lyrics do hold it back. It's just a very thrashy, fast number. This kind of lyrical content is somewhat hackneyed, but it can be done well, and it has been done well. Unfortunately, this is not one of those occasions, despite the strength of the music. All of the playing on the song is perfectly good and serviceable and very complex in places. So it really is a shame that I don't enjoy the lyrics that much. Can of Business is a super fun song musically, but the lyrics are again quite silly. The lyrics, although they've got quite an interesting idea at their core, the song's about kind of the legitimisation of the cannabis trade and the fact that it's moving away from being this illegal industry towards kind of more of a legitimate business. Yeah, as I say, those lyrics, you know, it's a fine subject and it's definitely an interesting thing that if executed well could be a really fun thing for a band to write about. It kind of sounds to me like they came up with the pun in the title before they actually wrote the song or wrote the lyrics, which is really not a great way to do it. If you're kind of working on things on the basis of a pun, then you end up with, you know, something that doesn't quite go down as well as if it had happened the other way. Like I say, musically the song's really fun. It's got a very strong chorus, a very strong verse. There's a pre-chorus in there that's really cool as well. And overall it's really just the lyrics that kind of let it down slightly. The album ends with the Number Game, which, despite being a perfectly serviceable song, is a little bit repetitive and generic. It's definitely in the lower tier of the album for me. Lyrics wise, I can't really get my head around this one particularly, but there's a lot of repeating of different numbers and things. I'm sure if I were to kind of sit down with the lyrics I could interpret them a little bit more kind of properly, but at the moment that's just not happened. It hasn't entered my brain properly, unfortunately. So to get into the sort of overall on the album, on the positive side, the performances are all solid, particularly from Gene Hoglan on the drums and Chuck Billy on the vocals. The vocals are consistently strong throughout. The production, although it's got that kind of typical metal production that you get a lot of nowadays, from kind of the interaction with the musicians' point of view, Juan Ortega, the producer, I've just had to check that I said that right, has done a really good job of getting great performances out of these guys and really uniform performances. The whole album feels consistent in just how much time was put into it, you know. And musically, I've got to say that this album is strong. You know, it's been written really well on the whole. There's only a couple of songs that kind of fall behind the pack musically for me, but on the whole this is a pretty solid album in that regard. On the negative side, the lyrics for the most part are either uninspired or slightly funny, which is only a good thing if you're going for that. Unfortunately, I don't think they were here. And also, despite there being plenty of good songs on the album, aside from one track, none of them really scream awesome at me, you know. As much as I love that first song, it doesn't really carry the weight too much for the others. But overall, I've got to say it's a good enough album, and if you're a Testament fan, you will probably be more than happy with it. So I'm going to give Brotherhood of the Snake a 7 out of 10. If you want to listen to my podcast, please go into the description, you'll find a link to it. It's called Ironcast. It's about all kinds of music we've covered: metal, rock, punk, pop music, rap. Go there and see what we've got. We're bound to have something that interests you. Until then, I'll be back soon with another video. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you very soon.